Hello and welcome to the next of the editing videos that I've just started doing, and here we are again in Lightroom, and it's one of my favourite sort of tools for doing my editing work in here. It's really nice because everything is catalogued quite well in here, and as you can see on the left hand side here we have our folders. So I just upgraded my computer, so my catalogues changed around quite a bit. Normally this will run right the way through from 2019 and coming into 2020. For each year I'll keep a new catalogue, but not really been out and shop much this year, and so for 2020. So what I'm going to do is start a new catalogue for the next session when I go out, hopefully this following weekend, and we can see what we can do from there. But from now we can look into a little bit of editing here, see how we can improve this shot that we've got running here as well, and we can make a bit of a improvement to what we got in camera as well. So a lot of the technique which I've done in here is obviously captured using the filters. So you can see up here we've got a 4-second exposure, f6.4, ISO 320, 11.5mm on the lens, and you can see all the lens and everything down here as well. So yeah, nice and straightforward. So yeah, from there it's just a case of again having a little look through our image, seeing what we kind of like. So I've been sort of flicking through, seeing the different stages of what I shot on this particular session. And you can see here it looks like the tripod may have moved a little bit. We've got like a double exposure coming up on here as well. You can really see it on there, so that's no good as well. And then let everything just load up on here. It's still got exactly the same on there as well. And I believe this was the shot that we had in mind for editing, and if you look down here now there's no double edge on here and everything is good to go as well. And for those of you who talk about these Fujifilm files and how they end up going really bad and stuff like that as well, this is at 100% on the Fujifilm files on Lightroom. You can see a few marks on here as well, but remember that we have had 40% of sharpening applied as well while the image is imported into Lightroom. And we can whip that out now because I'm not going to be using the sharpening until the end of the image on there as well. So let's have a little look into a quick edit on here, see what we can do. So again, we start off from the top on here for our crop on the image, and then left click on the mouse is going to bring up the grid, because I have the grid selection on here as well, which I think we can run through from here. So we've got grid overlay, so on there we can have paying particular attention to just around here and around here, because we're going to try and get it as horizontal as we can, running straight through there, and I'd say somewhere around about there it's going to do the job quite nicely. And again, you can either press enter or you can press done as well, and that's going to straighten everything up on there for you. And from on here we want to be having a little look around, making sure we're happy with the edges on there. You can see because we were shooting really wide on the wide angle lens, the wind turbines scrubby sands do look like they're sort of leaning over, but that's the distortion on the lens. Not much we can really do about that. What we can do is click on auto adjustment. It's not going to do much on there. We can then come down onto here as well. We'll just leave that on there for now. It's not making a big difference on there really, quite happy with that. So first thing we're going to look into is just drop down this highlight a little bit on here for the curve on here, create a nice basic looking sort of S-curve, add a little bit of darks in there, pick up the shadows a little bit as well, and then we'll then jump up the top here as well, give it a little bit more on the contrast, which is going to be adding in the detail in here quite significantly as well. And then what I then tend to do is on shots like these, I then look for something relatively white in the shot, again paying particular attention to this box up here now as well, something nice and white. So the whites on the water pretty much spot on. It's really started to punch that colour all the way into the shot in there as well. It's started to bring the blues out in the water a little bit more. The browns have really come out quite nicely on here as well, which I'm really liking how they're starting to look. And then again, we can just drop down this highlights and up that clarity a little bit. We don't want to go mad on the clarity because it starts to look a little bit unrealistic on there. But you can see now it's really started to bring up the spray on those waves around here. Definition of this metalwork coming at the water starting to pop out of the image as well. And then you can actually start to really see all the way across here where these the wind turbines are blowing right the way across the sort of right or halfway across the frame there. Really, it's quite nicely balanced out on that bit there. And from here we can give it a little bit of an adjustment on here. Again, we want to click that down, maybe just go for highlights, and we can bring up a few little highlights on there, and we can apply a few little highlights on there as well. If we wanted to, we could go a tiny bit on the exposure there. See, less is more with editing. You don't need to go mad. There we go. I'm going to go with that 0.9. All that's just going to do is just push up a tiny bit of an effect onto there, and we can give it a little bit on there as well. Kind of happy with that. That's just a very, very minimal amount of editing which has gone onto there. And from here, what I really want to do is start to bring out the definition on all this quite a bit more as well. So this is my normal sort of workflow that I sort of work with. We can just give that a little check on there. Yeah, so I'm liking how the colours come out. It's really started to come alive in that shot now, and that sunrise that morning was absolutely beautiful. It really was a nice golden glow. And what I remember from it the most is this blue meeting into the sky. You had this dark off to the left with the blue hour still, and it was hitting the golden hour, and that was that really was the morning sort of how it just came out that day. So from here, what I tend to do is just double check that we got our sharpening turned off as well, because I don't really rely on that now as well. Jump into here, and then we want to go into editing, and then we want to hit Photoshop as well. So Photoshop is going to be up to date as well, so it's the most recent version which there is on the Creative Cloud at the moment. I think there might have been an update just released today or the day previously as well. So I have a few plugins, so we just close this feature on here at the moment and let this image here open up quite nicely. And from here it's just a case of we need to have a little look with the Wacom tablet, and we can sort of run into some of these highlights, bring these up a little bit more, add a little bit more contrast in, give it a little bit more punch, and see what we can do. So I'll just grab my pen. So just grab the pen here as well, and this is quite reliant on a lot of shortcuts. So on here I'm on a Windows machine, so it's Control J, make a new layer. First thing you'll sort of really need to do, well for my workflow anyway, first thing you want to be doing is you want to be making a new layer, because then you're not going to be working on the main copy. If you need to undo the work that you've just been playing around with, it's quite easy then to just to be working around. So from here we want to be thinking about using our dodge and burn, which are two of my favourite tools for editing away with as well. And we're going to be working on highlights, which is set up here, and we're working on an exposure of 3%. So 3% is quite low. It's again exactly what I said, less is more when it comes to editing. And again, what we can do is use Control and 1, which is going to zoom us into 100%. And then if you use the space bar, if you're using a mouse or if you're using a Wacom tablet, I assign my bottom left button so I can then move around like this as well. It's zoomed in a little bit too much, So again, you can use Control minus just to zoom out a little bit as well. So we're now at 50%, which is kind of good. Maybe a little bit more for what we're doing on here. So it's going to be quite easy what we're going to be running over. So what I'm going to do is just bring out this highlight of this water where the water's run off, where it's just sort of whooshed back into the sea as well. And we're going to add that back in there. A little bit more coming around the edge on here. So it's just where the water did flow, and all we're just trying to do is just bring out a bit more detail in what was actually there as well. We're not trying to trick people into going absolutely crazy. And you can probably hear the brush there. We're just giving it a little bit of work on there. Nothing crazy. So if we start going too mad, again we can make our brush a bit bigger as well, just to cover a quicker area as well. And then again, Control 0 just to jump out, see how our edit's sort of looking as well. You can see how big and effective the brush area is on here as well. And again, using I'm using the minus button on the Wacom tablet here as well. And we can just add in a little bit of highlight where we need it, a little bit more into those clouds as well. So again, Control 1, and then we're using the spacebar drag just to bring everything along on here. And it's here now. You can start to see a little bit of detail within there. Just add a little bit of light in there, and then again, if we need to, we can then just jump down to the layer on and off. What I'm noticing now is that this highlight here is just a little bit too much. So in order to backtrack on what we just done, two ways: either Control Z if you want to step back for what you've just been doing, or quickest way, because we're not wanting to undo everything that we've just done. So again, if we Control drop down our brush size as well, we can just drop down our highlight so it's a little bit less noticeable on there as well. That's a little bit better on there. And again, working at the 3% mark on there as well. So our top one, dodge, that's adding your exposure, and then your burn is just sort of taking the exposure away. You're bringing the exposure down. So I always remember it sort of as burn as it's making the wood darker. That's the sort of effect that I'm sort of normally doing with it, playing with the shadows, making things darker. The dodge is bringing it up. So just little things like that helps me sort of remember things. I've got memory like a sieve, so I do tend to sort of need things to sort of remind me, even though I use these things day in and day out. But let's make this brush here just that little bit bigger as well. What we can do is let's just start to bring in, you can see the little changes it's making around these darker parts of the shot. You can see in there. So again, if we Control and 1 just to bring that in, and we can just bring this in here a little bit, make the brush a little bit smaller just to bring out the detail on there a little bit more. And what we can now go on to is our mid-tones, I think is what it needs a little bit of as well. So it's a real minimal amount of editing that we're going to add on to that, but it's going to make a fair big difference on the overall shot as well. So again, we add a bit of darkness on there, a bit more on there. Might want a bit of shadow in there just to bring out the dark on the metal, and on there, and a little bit more in here. Might need some more of that on mid-tones. Yeah, you can see that's applying the effect now, and again, always checking to see how we've just done. So turn that layer off, on, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a tiny bit more light onto the right hand side there, and then highlights, not a lot, but literally just at the top half, just to balance it out a little bit more as well. And from there I'm kind of happy on that one as well. And if you're happy with what you've edited, I mean, I don't really tend to keep my files as sort of TIFFs. I tend to keep everything in Lightroom for when I'm working with it. But from here, so Control E is going to flatten your image, because you don't want to be having to double the size of the image than what you need to be as well. And for me, I use a nice little tool in here as well. So it's a little plugin called Nick Effects, and it's the Define on here. And I'm a bit of a cheapskate. I use the free one, which, do you know what, it's done the job for a long time for me, so I'm quite happy with that. It's now going to analyze the image, pull out any of the dirt and the noise, any of the rubbish from the image. You can see from down here before, after, and you can really start to see the difference. Look at that sky where it's cleared it up as well, and we can give that a OK now. It's going to apply that as well. Let that finish its process. That's now happy. And you're not really going to see much of a difference on there, but Control E again, File, Save. Now what that's going to do is it's going to take the image that we just had in Photoshop. It's going to take that back into Lightroom, making a new file, and then it's also then going to create, apply all the edit we've just done to it as well. So I always mark off my images as to what's what as well. So you can see on here, Edit TIFF. Just look just down here as well, you'll see it pop up. So Edit TIFF. So that is, it's create a TIFF file from the edit that we've just been working in Photoshop, and with that we can see what's been applied to the image on there. And from here we can, if we wanted to, just apply a tiny bit more sharpening, not a lot. If you want to go right into here, you start to see what happens if you start adding too much sharpening. But just a tiny little bit more on there, and jump out. So again, just clicking on the actual image itself, we can see what's exactly going on with it. Maybe look and see how it will work with vignette. I don't think it's going to do any favours. No, it's really making it all grungy at the top. You see it all around here where it's starting to look really, really rubbish. So again, just double click on the button on there, and we should be really, really happy with how that image of theirs come out. And if we're finished with the image and we're ready for it to be going social media or wherever, what I tend to do, right click, export, and from here, so you can see on here, this is where we export to. So we've got our, it's telling us we're going to export to a hard drive, which is what we want to do. We've got a user preset for when I do my vlogs on there. Obviously this isn't London, this is Caister, so we can now decide to choose a drive where we want it to be able to go to. And where are we? There we are. Right, here we go. So in this folder here we have landscapes. I name everywhere by place where I've been to, Caister Beach, and then we have a low and high folder within there as well, quite self-explanatory. Low for low res, high for high res as well. So from here I just select my folder. I do everything in lowercase so I don't get duplicates, so I don't get a low all capitals or capital L and then lowercase. Everything's always done lowercase, so they always go in. Little rule that I also work to. Select folder, low, and from here we're going to be going for JPEG, limiting the file size to 400 kilobytes. 2048 pixels on the longest edge, 74 dpi, so it's a nice low res image. It's got a little watermark that I put in here which is set to go on here, very faint. You have to look quite close to see it, but it's handy for, I have quite a few cases where people have stolen images and used them and they've argued it was watermarked, but I really don't like having it on there. But this is so faint, you do have to really look for it to see it, so it's there if it needs to be contested, but it doesn't distract from the image. And from here we can then just click on export, and from there, once the little bar up here is finished, what you would have seen really quickly, that's everything done. So again, this is just try to keep it a nice short tutorial for you to be able to see how everything sort of works again. And from there, I hope you've enjoyed this session here as well, and any more ideas that you'd like to see me doing for any more tutorials, feel free to let me know and I'll see what I can do for you. Until then, all the best, take care, and have a great day.